Bonemeal, Minecraft's fertilizer, a vital fuel for many a farm. But how will we obtain this powdery delight? Well, very simply of course, with the humble composter, an organic vending machine. You throw stuff in and before long, you'll find yourself with a pocket full of renewability. The choices are plentiful. There are crops, fungi, and even cake that will compost down. However, we'll be using something much easier to produce en masse: moss. So, slip on a comfortable pair of boots and let's ascend Fact Mountain, shall we? Using Bonemeal on a moss block can transform a variety of nearby blocks into moss. Moss will only spread to blocks with air above them in a 7x11x7 area, excluding the corner blocks. There is a chance foliage will grow on top of the original moss block after using Bonemeal, and when this happens, Bonemeal will no longer transform nearby blocks until the foliage is removed. Pistons, when activated, will break moss instead of pushing it. Placing a moss block into a composter has a 65% chance of raising the compost level by 1, and when the composter is full, Bonemeal will drop. Knowledge acquired, let us begin. As luck would have it, I recently stumbled across a cave behind a waterfall, damp to the touch and perfectly sized to house our moss farm. First things first, we're going to need 2 stone generators. Start by placing 7 pistons in a row and cover the bottom side with a block of your choice. Use a temporary block to build yourself a trough at the front side of the pistons. Close in both ends and place solid blocks on top of the pistons. Leave a space above the trough, but place a row of blocks in front and add some temporary blocks underneath. Waterlog those pistons and empty lava buckets at the top of the trough. The lava will of course react with the water. Remove the temporary blocks to reveal yourself a row of freshly made stone. Now place 9 temporary blocks moving away from the centre of the stone row. Place 3 more on either side, and then an additional one on the front of either end. Go ahead and mirror the stone generator. Removing all temporary blocks, stand back and admire your work so far. Place a few structural blocks at either end of the trough opening and join the 2 generators from the front. To automate the stone creation, we're going to need a redstone clock. We all know and love the hopper clock, but for those who don't, it's pretty simple. Start by facing 2 hoppers into one another, place a comparator facing out from each hopper, sprinkle some redstone dust on the blocks the comparators point to, use the hitbox of the redstone dust to place some pistons facing in towards the hoppers, and then finish the clock by placing a redstone block on the face of either piston. For perfect timing between stone generation, add 3 items to one of the hoppers. Sprinkle a line of redstone dust from one side of the generator to the other, ensuring all pistons receive power. Use a repeater in the center to offset the pistons firing. If curiosity has the better of you, give it a test. When done correctly, a sheet of stone will soon appear between the generators. For efficiency, we only need to attempt moss growth every 4 rows of stone generated. And for that, we'll need a redstone counter. Place a redstone torch on the end block of the clock, followed by 2 droppers facing one another. Place a comparator facing out from each of the droppers. Place 2 blocks next to the comparators and place redstone torches on top. Place another 2 droppers facing one another above the comparators, and add 4 non-stackable items, a tool for example, into the lower front dropper and 1 non-stackable item into the higher front dropper. At the back side of the droppers, place a few solid blocks like so to house a redstone circuit. Place a comparator facing out from the higher back dropper and set to subtract mode. Then lay 2 redstone dust on the adjacent blocks. Place a piston next to the front redstone torch facing forwards, followed by a redstone block. My apologies. To push and pull the redstone block, we'll actually need a sticky piston here instead. Use a temporary block to place a dispenser facing backwards and place a moss block on the face of the dispenser and a piston on top of the redstone block facing towards the moss block. Add structural blocks to secure a hopper minecart beneath the moss block. To ensure moss doesn't fall to the floor when broken, place a 7x7 layer below the stone, but make sure that it's a block that cannot be transformed into moss. Test number 2. Load the dispenser with some bone meal, turn the clock on, and take a peek. Fingers crossed, your stone layer now transforms to moss. Time for some collection. At the back of the machine, place a few blocks off to the side of the counter to house a pulse extender. Sprinkle some redstone dust and power with a repeater set to 4 ticks. Lay a comparator facing away from the dust and another towards it. Add a target block followed by a redstone dust to complete the loop. Place a redstone torch on top of the target block and an observer facing it. Then place a row of 7 solid blocks with redstone dust on top. In front, place 7 dispensers with decorative blocks both above and below them. Add a water bucket to each of the dispensers. Raise the sides of both generators. Use temporary blocks to place 2 hoppers facing down at the front right of the machine, followed by 5 blocks to the left, and glass in front to create another trough. Stack chests using hoppers to collect and store all drops. Empty a water bucket in the trough, running towards the hoppers to complete collection. Test 3. When moss is broken, water will direct any drops to the collection system. Lastly, conversion. Place a chest boat on top of 6 hoppers, each feeding into a composter. Hoppers placed below each composter can direct the bone meal into a single chest. For every stack of bone meal used, you will make approximately 3 stacks of bone meal, taking around 12 minutes. So there you have it, infinite bone meal made possible. You, my friend, are welcome.